The Galactic Academy's amphitheater fell silent as Professor Zyxthor's crystalline form shimmered with anticipation. For 3,000 cycles, the ancient crystalline had taught cognitive philosophy to the galaxy's brightest minds, and today marked a special occasion. Representatives from 47 species sat in curved rows, their various forms creating a tapestry of galactic diversity. Students, Zyxthor's voice resonated through translation implants. Today I present the paradox of the unbreakable chain, a riddle that has remained unsolved across 17 civilizations. In the third row, Marcus Riley shifted in his seat, the only human among hundreds of alien students. At 23, he'd earned his place at the Academy through sheer determination, though many questioned whether humanity, barely a century into space travel, belonged among species who had mastered interstellar travel for millennia. The Draxian next to him, a being resembling a floating jellyfish with bioluminescent organs, pulsed dismissively. "Another test the primitive will fail," it whispered to its companion. Marcus had grown accustomed to such comments. Humans were considered the galaxy's eager students, enthusiastic but ultimately limited by their evolutionary youth. The VRWN calculated faster. The Sephari remembered everything perfectly. The Colossians could perceive 17 dimensions. What did humans offer except stubbornness and an odd sense of humor? Professor Zyxthor continued, "Imagine an unbreakable chain, forged from the strongest material in the universe. Each link is perfect, incapable of failing. Now imagine this chain is pulled from opposite ends with infinite force. The riddle, what breaks first?" The amphitheater erupted in discussion. The VRWN delegates immediately began mathematical calculations, their six-fingered hands dancing across holographic interfaces. The Sephari closed their triple eyelids, diving deep into their genetic memory banks for similar philosophical problems. The Colossians vibrated at frequencies that suggested they were exploring dimensional possibilities beyond standard perception. Hours passed. The species known for their logic proposed that the question was flawed, infinite force couldn't exist. The species known for their wisdom suggested that perfection itself was the flaw. The species known for their creativity tried to redefine what breaking meant in the context of the question. Marcus sat quietly, watching the greatest minds in the galaxy wrestle with the paradox. He thought about his childhood in Oklahoma, about his father who worked at a hardware store, about the simple lessons learned in a place far from the stars. He thought about the Saturday afternoons helping customers, about practical problems and practical solutions. Professor Zyxthor seemed pleased by the struggle. 17 civilizations, they repeated, have debated this for generations. Some spent decades building committee consensus. Others wrote volumes of theoretical frameworks. The Sephari devoted 300 years to this question alone. The Draxian beside Marcus pulsed with frustration. The premise must be examined. Can infinite force exist within our physical laws? A Colossian's voice harmonized through the chamber, perhaps in the 11th dimension, the concept of breaking transforms into something we cannot comprehend. More hours dissolved into passionate debate. Species formed alliances, then split over theoretical differences. The mathematical species argued with the philosophical species. The dimensional thinkers couldn't communicate effectively with the linear thinkers. Finally, Professor Zyxthor raised an appendage, and silence fell. Does anyone have a definitive answer? The amphitheater remained quiet, hundreds of advanced beings stumped by a seemingly simple question. Then Marcus raised his hand. The movement was so unexpected that several species translation implants initially registered it as a spasm. Professor Zyxthor's crystalline form shifted colors, surprise, according to Marcus's studies of crystalline body language. The human wishes to speak. There was no mockery in the professor's tone, only curiosity. Marcus stood, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes, sensors, and perception organs focusing on him. The answer is neither the chain nor the links, he said clearly. Whatever you're pulling with breaks first. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Professor Zyxthor began to shimmer with colors Marcus had never seen before, a cascade of prismatic light that filled the amphitheater. The crystalline was laughing. Correct. The professor's voice boomed with delight. In 3,000 cycles, across 47 species, you are the first to answer instantly and correctly. The amphitheater exploded into chaos. The VRWNN protested that they needed to verify the logic. The Sephari claimed they were about to reach the same conclusion. The Colossians vibrated in what their translator rendered as confused admiration. Professor ZYXTOR quieted them again. The riddle tests not intelligence but perspective. Every advanced species assumed the paradox lay within the chain itself. They focused on the perfect object, the unbreakable links, the theoretical forces. They forgot the most practical consideration, the mechanism applying the force. The professor turned to Marcus. Human, how did you solve it so quickly? Marcus shrugged, a gesture his translator had learned to interpret as humble uncertainty. My dad owns a hardware store. Whenever someone comes in talking about needing an unbreakable chain, he always asks the same question, what are you attaching it to? The chain's only as strong as the weakest point in the whole system. Doesn't matter how good the chain is if your anchor point fails. The Draxian beside him pulsed slowly, a sign of deep thought. The human applied, practical experience. Practical wisdom, Professor ZYXTOR corrected. Humans are young, yes. They lack our mathematical precision, our perfect memory, our dimensional perception. But they have something we've lost in our millions of years of evolution, they still remember that complexity often masks simple truths. Marcus sat down, his face warm with embarrassment and pride. Around him, the galaxy's greatest minds were reconsidering their assumptions about the primitive species from Earth. As the lecture concluded, the Draxian floated closer to Marcus. Perhaps, it pulsed carefully, humanity has more to teach us than we realized. Marcus smiled. Or maybe we just haven't forgotten how to think like beginners. In the vast amphitheater of the Galactic Academy, a simple truth had been revealed, sometimes the newest voice in the room sees what everyone else has overlooked. And sometimes, a hardware store in Oklahoma holds as much wisdom as 3,000 cycles of advanced civilization.